All right, so thank you for tuning in. This is PM Hive's first ever episode of our podcast, and today we are going to be welcoming Deepman. Thank you for joining today. Deepman is a program manager at Google Cloud. He has a lot of experience. He has a very interesting background that I'm sure you're going to be very interested in hearing today. I'm also personally very interested to hear a lot. So Deepman, first of all, thank you. Welcome. We are at Microsoft Office Vancouver. Thank you to Anthony for letting us in to record this episode. And let's just dive right into it because, first of all, Deepman, I know that you're a program manager at Google Cloud. I'm a product manager at PlanView myself, but I'm personally interested because Microsoft, I used to work at Microsoft and they called program managers product managers now, but before they called them program managers, right? And Google Cloud's, or at least Google Cloud, I don't know about the rest of the organization, but I know for a fact there are both product managers and program managers. But before we dive into that, of course, I want to give you maybe a minute or two to introduce yourself, what your background's like, and yeah, let's kick it off from there. So go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. Thank you for having me and giving this opportunity to talk about some of the aspects you just mentioned. This is Deepman, currently, as you said, a program manager with Google Cloud. I'm into this domain from last 4 years and into cloud computing domain from last 6 years. Started as a Java programmer, worked my way up doing MBA, which has a lesser role to play, of course, to where I am, and there are other factors which we'll talk about more. And yes, took a break and then underwent some certifications and then retrained myself into cloud computing. The timing was right. I got some good exposure into the initial stages, working with startups, understanding startups allowed me to look at the bigger picture versus enterprises of how data centers operate. And, finally I'm here with Google Cloud as a program manager. That's my background with respect to how, where I am today and how was the journey. Yeah.
I see. So obviously, I've worked with a lot of Java developers in the past. It seems like I've seen a lot, at least from my experience, I've met a lot of developers who've transitioned into product or program management. Do you mind kind of going into a little bit more detail about how and maybe why you decide to make the transition to PM rather than stay as an engineer or developer?
Yeah. Having shared my perspective, I would say, it might be different for everyone. For me, the motivation was to look at the bigger picture of, what my application, rather than looking into a module of how I'm going to implement a particular logic. I wanted to understand the broader picture of how my application is meeting the business needs, and probably talk with more stakeholders in the organization and understand how various dots connect with respect to understanding the impact I'm causing as a developer in the overall scheme of things. But my specific narrowed role in as a developer was not letting me do that. Also, I realized it was not my strength. So with that aim in mind, to understand the broader picture, I went in for an MBA just to be on the more partly at the interface of business and technology. And I'm glad that somewhere that decision helped me took time to reach the right role. Of course, we explore within the organization and find a right fit slowly, and that was my motivation. Development not my strength, although I was okay at it, and also to look at the broader picture of how our applications impact the business with that in mind.
Gotcha. You know what? Not to derail the conversation, honestly, but the fact that you mentioned your MBA, and I've personally been asked a lot from aspiring PMs whether or not doing an MBA is worth it to get into product or program management. Has anyone ever really kind of asked that question to you, or typically if you do get asked, what would you kind of respond with? Because I'm curious myself.
Yes, of course. I think as you might see in some of the job descriptions, they list MBA as a preferred qualification, but not a very deal breaker, because you can compensate those skills through experience. If you have that exposure through your work, that's not an indispensable MBA. But of course, the things which get taught in MBA, the communication, the cross-functional collaboration, understanding, tying technology with business, all those aspects, although I would call it a little bit of overkill, but probably for recruiters, it's one way to understand, easy way to understand before, instead of questioning, instead of, going through CVs, it's an easy way, one-liner, okay, this guy's an MBA, probably has some kind of right background for this role. But of course, I think sometimes 2 years or a 1 year degree for a specific set of relevant skills required for program
Right.
management is a kind of a overkill. That's my personal view.
I kind of agree with that, to be honest. Like it can sometimes be an overkill, especially within like a lot of entry level PM roles, right? And speaking of PM, honestly, like because when I first joined Microsoft and when I started asking other folks and started networking with a lot of technical people across Seattle, Vancouver, or even on the East Coast side, I did meet most product managers, but I did actually meet a few project and program managers too. I was very curious. I was like, what is this? Like, how different are TPMs, technical program managers? There are actually TPMs across other, FANG or other organizations like Meta, right? But is the TPM role kind of similar to your program manager role at Google Cloud?
I would say yes. There is a huge overlap between what I do as a program manager and technical program manager. I think some of the aspects of my job would require more technical depth.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of decisions, probably the kind of handshake we need to make with the software engineers while getting things done, or while collaborating with the engineering teams. So probably in some areas, probably more depth is required in the very specific domain. For example, it could be GCS, cloud storage,
Yeah.
a particular product, GPUs in Google Cloud Team. So probably that subject matter level expertise might require more technical knowledge, and which a technical program manager is supposed to have. And probably that is one next step in my ladder as a program manager. I'm doing some aspects of my technical program management right now, but of course for certain specific expectations, if you're more expert in a specific area technically, then technical program management is the way to go.
I actually, when I first joined Microsoft, I was, before they turned us all into product managers and TPMs, my role was in a platform team too, which is probably what you can kind of relate with, because I worked with no designers whatsoever. It was all execution on software platform projects. So this is stuff like shipping models, going to capacity council and asking for GPUs to, talking about ROI, and then listing what type of GPUs you needed from, what type for what type of model it was. We even had stuff like FPGAs. Apparently those are like very interesting specifically for very niche models and stuff. And a lot of that stuff. So I feel like coming from a non-traditional background, I didn't have as much of a technical background, similar to Anthony. So I kind of struggled a lot at first to really ramp up. Like I felt like my ramp up time was very long because of that. And that's why I feel like when people ask me, whether I should do kind of more to a program manager role or product manager role, similar to you, I tell them, take a look at the job responsibilities first. If it seems like it's more execution focused, it most likely might be more related to, like you kind of mentioned, needing to understand the technical depths and the trade-offs of a project, and working more closely with the EMs, the engineering managers, rather than with product design, marketing, sales, which is my current role. So I'm enjoying my role a bit more. But so that's why, if you have like that more technical background, it's much easier to transition into PM through that route, through executing via TPM or program management roles, rather than just trying to jump straight into more of like I guess you could say product marketing and sales focused sort of job.
Yes.
And I guess my next question to you, maybe very similar, is like, how do you enjoy your current role? Is there anything that you can kind of describe, like what's your day-to-day like from beginning to end, or just like what's your favorite kind of part of doing it on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. The interesting and also one of the favorite parts of being a program manager is that you don't need to know all the answers, but probably should have an ability to get those answers, to ask the right set of questions, probing questions, and interface with your networking teams and cross-functional stakeholders to get those answers, which helps solve the common problem as a program manager. So that why it is my favorite, because the skills of asking the right set of questions has also helped me not only in my job, it also in my personal life, whether it's launching a new song on Spotify or probably any other personal weight loss goals or anything like that. So probably the program management aspect of root cause analysis and finding the right information from the right sources, that skill got developed in this role and probably also helped me in my personal life. This is one aspect I would like to quote as one of my favorites, working with the program management. And other thing is also interfacing with various teams, you are able to connect the dots of where overall the organization is going, how various functions in the organizations are tied together to achieve the common vision, and you feel how your work is has a value for the organization, so that you can connect what CEO is saying and how my work, what I am doing, there is some kind of alignment. Once you look at the broader pictures, and connect the dots with, program management role allows you to talk with various teams, and that helps you understand the overall vision of the organization as well, I think.
Do you feel like from the program management role perspective, you focus a little bit more, how like there are certain product management related books, or there's a lot of like, key influencers within the product space that talk about there's like kind of two separations, at least very high level when it comes to work in product management is you do the discovery/strategy work, and then there's the delivery/execution. Program management seems to be a little bit more leaning towards execution, right? At least from your experience.
Yes. I would say yes and no. Yes, to a certain extent, because there is an execution part of it. Program management has a good overlap with project management, and some people might disagree, or it might vary from company to company. But I would see project management entails more towards execution.
Yeah.
And program management is execution as well as the strategy part of it, or probably. For example, if I talk about metrics, project manager would be more focused on implementing those metrics and tracking those KPIs, versus program manager who is on top of that might define the metrics, or probably or also might, as I said earlier, work on the strategy aspect. And for project manager, the strategy might already be defined to a certain extent.
Right.
But that's one way. That's personal view. Also, probably differs from organizations to organizations, where probably project managers are playing even a more broader role. Also, on the contrary. Yeah.
Right. Actually, to your point, I have a pretty funny story. So at least within the Microsoft Bing organization, they kind of split it up, and it's not just Bing. It's like the whole category of various different Bing related products. You got news and feeds, you got ads, you got multimedia, so like all the images and video and stuff like that. And then all coalesced into just one, or not coalesced, but kind of all conglomerated into one specific team called, I think it's called WWE now. Before it's called Web Experiences Team. And there was also a platform team at that same level. So literally there was these feature teams, and then search, multimedia, news, feeds, and all that sort of stuff, MSN and all that stuff. And then there was a platform team supporting everyone. And the platform team was like, we treated platform as a product. And when I first joined, obviously me being like, relatively young and with, very few experiences on my repertoire, I was very confused. Like, how do we consider platform as a product? And what do you mean? Like, how do we, like, because ultimately it's the feature teams who have the end user in mind, and kind of at the end of the day, they're driving, the revenue, the daily active users, the engagement, whatever the product success metrics have been defined. And the platform team has to support those end goals. But then ultimately it was hard for us because we have our own, internal platformy metrics to deal with, but then also have to serve requirements provided by the feature teams to support that. I don't know if it's the same as Google Cloud, but in the sense I'm kind of describing what I experienced, and I don't know if that can be directly applied to how you experienced it. But I don't know how, so that's kind of, I'm curious as whether or not Google Cloud kind of has that similar structure, and that you perhaps as a program manager, you're working more on the platformy back-end side of stuff, supporting the feature end products, or is that not the way I'm thinking?
I would say it's generally products and platforms are synonymous also. But if the question is more related to product and platforms and less related to program management, I think feel free to correct me. I'll say, so yeah, there are similarities in how the teams are structured. Probably same across many organizations, not just Google, but also there might be finer differences with respect to how a platform is perceived in specific organization. Yeah, in general, probably if we take a very layman example of, Amazon.com is a product also, and and of course, we are various sellers and are on board that platform to sell, and buyers are also there on that platform.
Yeah.
So similarly, it's hard to distinct between product and platform even at Google's
Yeah.
ecosystem. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers it, but yeah, if that helps, but feel free to.
No, it definitely helps. I'm kind of curious, like, is there a specific feature or like kind of like value stream or feature or like sort of stream or scenario that you focus on at Google Cloud? Because it's a massive, expansive product. I use it every day.
Yeah. Of course, I can say with respect to my role, from whatever is publicly available to job descriptions, I can say my role at Google Cloud is of a capacity planner, a capacity management program manager, which is to say, I cross-functionally engage with various teams to ensure that the right hardware, because people consider cloud to be infinite, but of course we have a limited racks and servers and disks in data centers, and we procure that based on the demand we get. Some customers have a Black Friday sale, so traffic will peak up, so my role would be to gather how much capacity is needed, how many terabytes of disk, for example, SSD or GPUs or cloud storage is needed, and then convert into the right format and make it understandable with my supply teams. And if we have that available in inventory, fine. Otherwise, order it and wait for the lead times and track it, and then coordinate with various supply chain backend teams to ensure that the right hardware is in place and the customer can increase their traffic at the right time for their Black Friday needs. So that is the kind of a coordination I'm doing with my teams at Google Cloud to ensure that the hardware or the cloud capacity is in place at the right data center. So,
to me, that's actually very interesting because number one, it kind of at least perpetuates the fact that product and program managers don't have necessarily, they work on the most nuanced scenarios. You have capacity planning, you have nuances or stuff that's filling the gaps when there's capacity planning, but there's something else missing internally. There's more feature and customer user-facing products and features, but then there's the internal capacity planning, platformy products out there, and internal, like, migrate this to that, eliminate tech debt, eliminate all this or that, which is stuff that I've worked on in Bing. And that's when I realized, like, there's, at least if you're in a large tech company, right, maybe a medium-sized to at least a large FANG level company, you're working on, as a programmer, product manager, or TPM, you could work on, like, anything, not even, like, it doesn't have to be feature or user-based. It can be, like, a platformy product that has absolutely nothing to do with the daily active users of your product, but it can save the company XYZ capacity if you ship it. Actually, so what Microsoft did, and obviously keep it high level and confidential, is every quarter or whatnot, every semester we have capacity planning too. So every single time the team will go into full planning mode. What the requirement we receive as a platform team, we receive requirements from other teams, and then once we figure out what needs to be built, that determines therefore what the capacity is needed to ship those new models or those new features, right? And then it was partially my job to go to the capacity council and request this. So we had, I think similar to probably what Google Cloud has, is a whole internal capacity portal where you can literally file tickets, exactly what you need, how many GPUs, like for example, I need 10 A100s to ship this new AI model, and what the ROI is. Right, so like for example, this A100 based GPU based model will therefore save us 5% of our whole disk in the future for the next 5 years. This amount of CPU cores and everything as well. And then like after we kind of go through that, there's a whole process where you have to go through like the initial scan, and then you have to eventually, it escalates up to even the chief vice president, who will also go over your scenario and will give the final sign off. For you to actually get that capacity. What I'm describing is probably like the maximum amount of detail I can provide, but is that kind of similar to how Google Cloud processes stuff?
Yeah, there are tools in place, as said, to empower and enable that coordination and communication. We have certain tools, ticketing tools in place, and and of course documentation, collaboration tools, to foster that coordination, and I have to follow up and coordinate and raise my requirements in a specific format. So we have a similar tool system and a ticketing system to enable that kind of thing.
And not to get too technical, because we should probably move on to the more fun, exciting stuff for the rest of the audience to listen to. But what's interesting and what people will probably realize when they jump into a lot of these types of roles and companies is a lot of the large companies like Google, Microsoft, even Meta, and even going down to like more mid-level but at least very expanding companies like Uber, Lyft, and everything, and Airbnb, they typically will have their own kind of at least their own cloud environments, so that such that they don't need to rely on maybe cloud service providers to get the capacity they need every single time. Large companies especially, right? Like you guys, we already have Microsoft owns Azure, Google owns GCP, so we already have that like we already have the infrastructure. But like you said, capacity is finite, so you still have to kind of negotiate with other teams, make sure the ROI is still there, and all that sort of stuff. So it can get kind of political. But yeah, I'm gonna kind of rerail our conversation because we probably got too much into the weeds about the whole technical capacity management stuff. I did want to ask you specifically about your music journey. And what's actually very interesting to me is I care a lot about what people do outside of work. I care about more so like, what did you want to do if you were not a product manager or program manager? I cared kind of about like what's on the side. Do you ever feel like maybe one day you could kind of coalesce that product management experience, that career path, and converge it with whatever you like to do on the side, your passion. So you mentioned you produce music. If you're able to tell us a little bit about your music journey, that would be awesome.
Sure, yeah. And before I say that, I think it also, I don't find it totally tangential, because if you pursue what you love to do, probably it also, you can bring back the same happiness and fulfillment back into your work and do it more productively, versus putting extra hours but not engaged in the work. So if you're focused and more intense, creatively fulfilled, the same amount of hours will lead to more results in your work. So yeah, so that's the importance of passion, I perceive.
Yeah.
Pursuing what you like to do, what makes you happy, hobbies or anything. So music is that for me, and it's only recent that probably I've started putting up some songs on Spotify, and the journey was long, the discovery journey, how to do that. But to a certain extent, the program management skills helped me, because it's again, working with music producers, working with studio owners, and many other teams to make that happen. And I've as a background, I was inclined towards music. I've been playing an Indian classical percussion instrument called tabla since childhood, and but I never thought of that. I always had that dream of looking how end-to-end songs get made, but from last 2 to 3 years, being away from family got me that extra time, and probably I researched a bit how to write songs, and what is the life cycle, composing lyrics and then creating a dummy out of. Again, there is overlap with software, because these days music is generated electronically more versus traditionally.
Yeah.
And that's my space, and a good hand and comfort with the Fruity Loops music production software has also helped me. So yeah, that was my journey, probably writing lyrics, creating a very rough dummy track through my own software skills, and taking to a music producer, coordinating with music producers, studio owners, and then there's a mixing mastering phase, which is more of an audio engineering thing. I outsourced it to producer again, and finally came up with the audio track, and was able to, although there was very few listeners in my initial tracks, but with continuous improvement and learning, my last track has a good traction on Spotify.
It's pretty interesting, because once I became kind of curious back in the day as well, on how music is produced. Like there's the foreground, the background, multiple different layers with the software you're using. It's very interesting. By the way, if you are curious about Deepman's music profile, I'm gonna link your Spotify into the bio wherever we post this episode. But yeah, like with your music production and all, and then kind of balancing that with the program management role you have at Google Cloud, how do you feel like your next kind of 5 to 10 years will pan out in terms of career? Do you feel like you're going to continue separate the music hobby with your product management / program management career path?
Yes, the good thing about working with, as I help my organization solve some of the problems with respect to cloud capacity, I also am vigilant about I've become aware of what developments in AI and things like that, what the world is doing with AI and
Yeah.
using Google Cloud hardware. And some of those applications are also relevant in my music making process. I think how probably so. Looking to answer your question, 5 years down the line, I think I might find more avenues where I can leverage AI,
Yeah.
maybe leverage Google Cloud or some of the tools they offer, and rather become a customer of more involved customer of a Google Cloud using some of those technologies and probably use it in my music making process. But of course, the fundamentals of music would remain the same.
Yeah.
Some a few things I'm making it interesting using AI. Yeah.
On that topic, with regards to AI, I've been exploring various different AI tools with music generation. Like there's this thing called Voicify, which I was playing around with. If you take any sort of MP3 file, upload it, make it processed with whatever model they have, Gen AI model, it will literally make it so that the song will like match whatever voice that you choose. Like you can make Barack Obama sing Taylor Swift or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's pretty interesting. I don't know to the extent that AI will. I'm always curious, like how much can AI really impact music production? Could it literally produce the rest of the song for you if you can, for example, just establish the bass foundations, the bass, the melody, and then let AI do kind of like the rest? It's very interesting, kind of scary. Have you kind of like explored or had it, like developed any thoughts about that?
Yes, I think there are some scary aspects and there are some productive and creative aspects also.
Yeah.
There's a service called lala.ai. I mean,
I
something
heard
like
about
that
it,
probably,
yeah.
and which out of the various instruments and vocal tracks, you can pinpoint which one you want to subtract out of the overall
Oh, wow.
composition and selectively do that. And probably it can help you, take inspiration from existing songs and replace three instruments or that voice of the singer and substitute with your own voice. And probably people do cover songs already, right?
Yeah.
So probably it would be a different way of doing cover songs where probably you can add your own instruments and use some of the existing instruments and add your own voice, or probably use, as you said, Barack Obama voice.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
one joke in my own home country is because they say that the most popular singer award goes to Prime Minister Modi. Because there are
That's
so much
funny.
memes and jokes around same popular songs being voiced in Prime Minister Modi's voice, and with
Yeah.
the proper context of that joke. And probably so people last year heard more songs from Prime Minister Modi's voice on Instagram than the original singers,
the original sing-
because people
oh my
played around
gosh.
with this AI tools. So probably
Yeah.
such mix and match, and it helps boost the creativity and see newer innovations, of course. And there are scary aspects of royalty going in the wrong, getting impacted of those popular singers also.
Oh my god.
But some singers are, I'm not too aware of the details, but there is an ongoing debate. Some popular singers are happy to lend their voice,
Yeah.
and it makes them more popular. Probably they are also exploring applying a royalty fee to it. But yeah, that it's evolving. I think the landscape and has both scary as well as good aspects to it.
For sure.
Yeah.
And we have about 7 to 8 minutes left in our episode. I do want to cover the most important, probably least but not important, or sorry, no, last but not least important topic for today's episode, which is probably what everyone kind of maybe perhaps I would guess tune in the most about, is when you at least describing your journey on how you transitioned into product or program management, and how you feel, what type of skills you've developed over the years that will enable someone else trying to emulate you getting into product or program management within, a large big tech company like a FANG or a mid-sized market or a very high growth accelerating startup or something like that. What do you feel like? I mean, I'm kind of bombarding you with way too many questions all in one, but kind of jungled into that same, type of theme, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, part of it I've already touched upon, that things I've gained over the last few years working as a program manager, skills I've developed, which further are some of the sought after skills for anyone to enter into program management.
Yeah.
Would be one, even if you don't have the answer, the ability to get the answer is what I've developed, and also is one of the sought after skill. Number two would be to influence without authority. The current role I'm into doesn't have anyone reporting to me. I'm an individual contributor, but still you have to get the work done, and there are elements like personally empathy, or being in others' shoes, and probably looking at the common vision, common broader organization goal we are solving, and focusing on that to get things done from other teams, even if you don't have a direct authority over them. And of course, this ability to connect dots. Finally, what some of the organizations are looking at, STAR principle, to summarize, to be able to crisply articulate the message in as short as way as possible. There are frameworks like STAR: situation, task, action, and result, and these are some of the things I have developed, and probably are some of the expectations from a program manager as well.
Actually, to your point, my former boss back at Microsoft, when I was asking very harsh feedback, he told me something that I kind of felt like something from left field, because to me it kind of still, it has it in my back of my mind to this day, is when you said connect the dots. He said that those same exact words, but perhaps in a little bit different context, but same meaning, is you need to understand, broadly speaking, every single team and how they all fit within the business function that you're part of, how they're part and contribute to a specific product, why our success metrics are defined the way they are, and how they are established. Like literally, how, like from an engineering perspective, would you define the metrics for success? How would you measure it? Baseline, target, success, metric, everything, and then use those for KRs after, A to B KRs and everything like that. But then I'll tie it all the way back into like how you see your product management or program management role, like how you fit within the whole picture and why you have to do this. Because I would always kind of like, I was kind of like a spoiled brat, always telling people like, why, like for example, like I would be very like transparent with my boss at the time, like, for example, how does my job, we're in a platform team, how the hell do we measure for success and see it? Because I'm getting imposter syndrome for not seeing my results on the screen of a product, right? It's an internal role. My role is similar to yours, internal role supporting other product and business functions. So how the hell do I see that specific impact? Otherwise, I'm just gonna feel like I'm not making any impact at all. And then that's kind of like what you described as what helped me realize that I needed this sort of product mindset, where anyone who wants to jump into product or program management needs to understand exactly the more like large context of business in general, the business functions, how streams of value kind of like flow across from end to end, right? From beginning to end, how from an architectural and engineering point of view, like how the data flows and how that kind of like fits it within your pipeline or within your function of work. And that's how you can at least picture why you're important within that whole broad spectrum. Because in a large tech company, there's like literally a role for everything. There's like you could be a PM for a janitor management system within the internal, like within an internal department of something else. Like that's how, like, I mean, obviously I'm being facetious with my descriptions, but I'm trying to describe like there's literally a role for everything. So I don't know if you're kind of like you felt the same initially or anything like that, but that's kind of how I realized like what I was missing.
I think you brought a very nice point I was missing with respect to expectations from a program manager, which is ability to articulate, because how successful you are as a program manager, you might have delivered in your own eyes as a program manager a lot of value.
Right.
But how your manager or how your organization sees that value is, again, ability to articulate the impact in terms of what matrix changes you improved,
right,
from this much delay in turnaround time to 20% delay, savings of this much revenue, unblocked, customers were stuck at this point and that was causing a business impact of this much dollars, and probably that we have ability. It takes extra effort to justify your role. Probably many program managers are not happy with that aspect of their job, because that also helps them justify their role into their organization and in their annual performance appraisal rating, and also probably is also helps them to understand their impact in the organization themselves. That okay, this is how I changed the metrics. This is how I brought some dollar benefits, and ability to not just realize within yourself, but articulate in documentation and make it visible to your management, so that you are seen as successful program manager. It is a very important aspect you just mentioned.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
absolutely. And you're kind of seconding, adding a lot of value to my thought too, because ultimately we have to wrap it up, but I do want to make one last point is I do agree. I also think that it's important to dig deep into whatever function you are. If you're a growth or marketing product related manager of some sort, dig deep within that field of understanding how marketing kind of functions and ties back into connected dots. If you're more on the TPM or program management side, dig deep into the technology. That's what my old boss always used to tell me is you're not digging deep enough into why we have to make those trade-offs, what the architecture, at least from a high level PM standpoint, looks like, and why that connects back to the decisions we made from an engineering point of view, right? So digging deep always helps me because it grounds me to realize that I don't know enough, and I need there's both depth and breadth of information across any product team.
And that to end is a typical to program manager versus other, the length and breadth, and there's an ocean which you have to churn and narrow down your focus areas. And that I see more with the program management than product and project.
Yeah, that's what my boss always used to tell me. But yeah, I mean, anyways, we're at time. Thank you so much for listening in if you made it to this point. Deepman, again, thank you so much for joining me today. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you and discuss all things music, product, and program management at Google Cloud. For those listening, obviously we're going to continue this cadence of podcast episodes on interviewing a lot of industry professionals that have made it to a lot of, have a lot of experience under the belt, so to speak, for lack of a better description. And with that said, thank you again. Tune in for next time. And Deepman, do you have anything last minute to say? Or
No, I just want to express my gratitude for this wonderful opportunity, and it was kind of an interesting exchange of our experiences. And I wish it helps someone aspiring to get into these roles. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, with that being said, thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.